Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Tonight we are going to make some lo mein with some teriyaki pork meatballs and get those whipped up nicely. So we're going to start off with 2 slices of bread because we're going to make a kind of a teriyaki panade for our pork meatballs. So just like we would a regular panade, we're going to soak our bread, so 2 soft slices, in some cream. You want enough to make them soggy, but not drenched and dripping. And this is going to help create the binder for our lovely meatballs that we'll have bake up in the oven while we work on our lo mein. Okay, these look pretty good. Now we're going to add in 2 eggs because, again, I have about 2 pounds of meat. I have a little bit over, but 2 eggs will do fine. And then, so we've got our 2 eggs in here, and now we're going to add in our spices before we add in our meat. Okay, for our spices, we're going to use some ginger paste. You can always use dried ginger if you want. I'm going to use about a teaspoon of ginger paste, but you'd use about a half a teaspoon of dried because it's a bit more spicy. We're going to do about a tablespoon of onion powder. We're going to do a couple shakes of garlic salt. We're going to be around a teaspoon of garlic salt because we're going to be also using some Japanese barbecue sauce in here. So you don't want to have too much sodium in it or too much salt. We're going to do about a half a teaspoon of black pepper. And then about a tablespoon or so of our Japanese barbecue sauce. And then we're going to have some green onions. So I'm going to snip these up in here, and then we're going to work this together to make our lovely panade, and then we'll add in our pork. So I'm just, some of these fat parts I'm just snipping down, and then we're cutting it in here because I don't want to have super huge chunks of the green onions, but it adds such a great flavor. Now you could always use chives as well, or scallions. In a pinch, you could, cut up some, like, I would say some yellow onion, but I would saute it first to give it, take away a little bit of that stronger flavor in it. There we go. And just about there. And now we're going to get in with our hands, and then we're going to kind of incorporate this all to make a nice paste that we will then incorporate into our pork. So you're just going to kind of grab it through your hands like this and squeeze it until you've got just like one cohesive paste. And that's why you need to make sure that when you have your bread that you've got it soggy enough that it's willing to kind of break down really easily versus being a little stiff. When you're choosing your bread, you want to use a soft bread. You do want to avoid like a sourdough or a crusty Italian because those crusts will just never kind of break up in there, and then you'll get big chunks in your meatballs. Here we go. But this is our lovely panade that we will add our pork to, and then we will incorporate these together. Okay. So I've got my little over 2 pounds of ground pork. And the exact same way we kind of made the panade, we're going to do the same technique with the pork in our panade. And you're just simply going to squeeze everything through your hands until it's all incorporated. I will say working with meat that has been taken out of the fridge for at least 15 minutes is much better than for meat right out of the fridge because it gets pretty cold.
Hey, you have a question? Did any of the kids get into the scotcheroos yet?
Yes, they did. They were. We've already got a good section taken out. I'll bring them over here in a little bit. None of the kids could wait. It's still not completely firm at the top, but it's not liquid anymore. So it's like a semi-soft top. But yes, they've all gone in, and I've had one too because, again, I can't resist these scotcheroos. They're my favorite. But so far, almost all of the kids have had one already. Evie like got home from gymnastics and she was like, "Ooh, can I have one?" And then she came back and she's like, "Can I have some more?" And then Teddy showed up and then Torrin showed up and now we've got a nice chunk missing. And then I have the problem of every time I cut, I had to kind of even out their slice a little bit, cut a little bit more, make it more uniform in there. Here we go. And I will say it's one of my best batches of the scotcheroos. I got it just perfect with the cooking of the corn syrup and this sugar. Okay, looks like we've got our pork base pretty much mixed in here. So what you kind of have left is a little bit of a slightly sticky meat, but it holds together really well. So we're going to shape up our meatballs here for our lo mein. So it's kind of a twist on our, like a pork lo mein. Instead of doing like an actual pork and cutlet, we got pork meatballs. And the flavor of these meatballs, if you think about having like a pork like fried dumpling or pot sticker, that's kind of the flavoring that I'm going for with them, which is, I love pot stickers. They're one of my favorite things, or fried dumplings or fried wontons. They've got so many different names, but they're one of my favorite things to get as like an appetizer. There we go. So we're going to roll these up. They are going to shrink a little bit when they cook up because they have, their pork and it's kind of higher fat meat. So they'll kind of sweat out a little bit of their fat when they cook. But we'll get these. And then I'm going to do these on my air fryer setting in my oven, which is going to allow them to cook up really fast, but also keep them really juicy. Sometimes I find that if you go a little bit higher and take away a little bit of the cooking time, they just end up slightly better flavor and texture. Here, we'll get these rolled out. I always say the only thing about meatballs that is like my least favorite part is rolling them out. And I always try not to go too big, but it's so easy to be like, let's just have really big meatballs so I don't have to do quite as much rolling. But it shouldn't take too long. This isn't too much meat. Here we go. And this meat is like, it's sticky, but it's able to be rolled, which is nice because then you can get a pretty good uniform shape on it. Here we go. And then we will start, after this, we'll start working on our sauteed vegetables, part of our lo mein. And we'll start cooking up our lo mein noodles. We'll make a lovely kind of sauce that we'll toss everything in using our good old Japanese barbecue sauce, coconut aminos, ginger, a little bit of miso paste, and it's just going to be lovely. Here we go. Just a few more left. I always wonder how fast I could whip these out. And I always say, I feel people are always like, find that making homemade meatballs like a little bit of a daunting task. It's actually pretty easy to make, and it's really hard to mess up because using like the panade method of the cream, the bread, and the egg really keeps them nice and tender. And as long as you season them up well enough, and I always say you use a bit more than you think, then they're just going to be delicious. They're better than frozen meatballs. A lot cheaper too. Especially with pork. Pork is one of those really cheap meats, so you can get it there. But you could also make these with ground chicken or ground turkey as well. Those would both be lovely options because those play really well with like the teriyaki flavors. Okay, we should be able to get our last few out here. Then I'll wash my hands and then we can pop these in the oven and be ready to start on the rest of our dinner. Here we go. And somehow I managed to make it out almost perfectly. Okay, let's go get our hands washed and then we can pop these guys in the oven. Okay, So I have my oven set to the air fryer setting at 425, which is going to allow these to cook up in about 15 minutes because they're pretty good size ones, which I find just is perfect because you don't cook them so long where they sweat out all of your juices. So they're still very moist and tender inside, but cooked all the way through.
Can you go over what's in the meatballs?
Yes. Let me just set my timer here so I don't forget. So for the meatballs, we started out with our panade, which we made using 2 eggs, 2 slices of bread, and about a 4th cup of cream. And then we, made kind of the bread soggy, put the eggs in, and then I added in about a tablespoon of Japanese barbecue sauce, about a teaspoon of ginger paste, about a teaspoon of garlic salt, and half a teaspoon of black pepper. We cut up 2 green onions and onion powder and a tablespoon of onion powder. And that is the base for our meatballs. Mix all that together, and then we added in about 2 pounds of pork. Mixed it all well and shaped it up, and now they're in the oven cooking. Okay, we're gonna cook up our onions here in just a second, but I'm gonna add in some olive oil. We've got putting in about a teaspoon and a half of our regular olive oil. And then we're going to use a little bit of sesame oil. I don't like to use straight up sesame oil because I find that it's got a pretty strong flavor. But if you cut it with a little bit of olive oil, you get that sesame flavor without it being too strong. And that just gives you another, like one of those levels of flavors. Because with Asian dishes, there are a lot of ingredients that work together in unison to create this complex but wonderful set of flavors. And so it's all about layering the different flavors together to get you that just lovely umami flavor in the end. Because we're doing a lo mein, I'm going to do long and skinny onions here so that they kind of blend with our noodles. I'm going to swirl this around. There we go. And then I'm going to turn my pan to about a 4, and then we can have our onions start to cook up in here. Just going to help them start to break apart. Here we go. And then I'm going to grab some tongs.
Hey, you have a question? Do you ever do breakfasts?
I do breakfasts. Typically just on the weekends, on either Saturday or Sunday. I will say our breakfasts are later. We're kind of we get up late on the weekends. So they're more like a brunches, which are probably like everybody else's lunches. But if you've noticed us, we kind of eat a lot later than everybody else. We eat our lunch later. We eat our breakfast later. We're just later people. We're night owls. So we do. And there's lots of them. If you go through, we have lots of videos as well. I know for our members, we have a couple recipe cards out there that are breakfast recipe cards too. But yes, I do a good amount of breakfasts on the weekends.
And for one of your hot takes, do you prefer electric or gas?
Oh, yes. So growing up, I had gas, and I always thought I was going to be a gas forever, love it. But then my last house and then this house, our forever home, it had electric. And when we remodeled it, we thought about, I was like, oh, can we put in gas? But we're on a concrete slab, and the way where it was going to be a lot of like punching through the concrete slab and whatnot. So I was like, not worth it. I actually really like electric because it's consistent. Now, gas is gorgeous and beautiful, and you have a lot more variety and options. They have bigger ranges. Electric doesn't come with bigger ranges unless you get a commercial one, which are like tens of thousands of dollars. We're going to put our lo mein noodles in our water here. This only takes about 4 to 5 minutes to cook up. So we'll get both sets in here and we'll give them a good toss. So I have found over the years that with electric, it is very reliable. It cooks the same amount of time every single time, especially on the oven. I'm not a big fan of gas ovens because I find that they don't cook as evenly and uniformly because that flame goes up and down and kind of goes off as a regular electric oven. So I know I'm not the popular opinion on this, but I do love I do love my electric one. Now, if I could get an electric one that was 6 inches bigger with an extra 2 burners on it, that would make me so happy. They don't exist unless you buy the really expensive ones. Here we go. So I'm going to toss these up. Again, these don't need very long, but with these noodles, you do want to make sure you kind of break them apart because they like to stick to each other, and we don't want that. So just constantly give them a little stir.
What about baking or cooking? Which do you prefer?
I like cooking because cooking you can experiment more with. Baking, you got to follow a set of rules. And as much as I love following rules, it's just not as fun. Where cooking is all about flavor profiles. There's so many different techniques that you can go together, but you can experiment with it a lot more versus baking. Certain things you have to just follow the rules on for it to turn out. And I am a salty girl. I love savory and salty foods over sweet foods. Like when I come to breakfasts, I like omelets and skillets, not pancakes or just anything. I just love salty foods. So that kind of leans in more to my liking, cooking. Okay, I've got a green pepper, which we picked from our garden, and then these are not spicy peppers. They're just good old sweet peppers because I do not like spicy food. That's also probably an unpopular thing, but I just can't handle it. When it's anytime I get food, and it's not that they won't have great flavors. I just am constantly having to drink so much liquid because I'm just burning up. With our onions being long and skinny to match our noodles, we're going to do our peppers long and skinny as well. I find when you are cutting peppers, these peppers, onions, and tomatoes are the ones that I find your knives are going to slip the most on if they are dull. So if you find your knife slipping on the skin, sharpen it up. But another way with the peppers is if you cut them from the inside versus from the skin side, it's much easier. That inside has a little bit of grit and it grips your knife a lot better.
Here's a good one for you. What's your favorite sourdough inclusion you've done?
Ooh, my favorite sourdough inclusion. I have to say, and this one's really simple, but I loved it. It was black pepper and Gouda cheese with a little bit of oregano. I love that one as just kind of just was a great one altogether. But I did make this kind of dessert sourdough. And again, I'm not a sweet person, but it was so good. So it was my chocolate sourdough starter that I made. So then I made a chocolate sourdough loaf with it with marzipan or almond paste in it and chocolate chunks. And it was so good. It was just amazing. Here we go. So just about a minute or two on our noodles. But again, you want to stir them so that they keep separated and not stuck together. We've got our onions cooking up in our mixture of olive oil and sesame oil. And then I'm going to finish slicing up my sweet peppers here. If you want a little bit of heat, but not too much, shishito peppers are amazing. Shishito peppers are mild for the most part, but they're like Russian roulette. They say 1 in 10 peppers is spicy. And it's fun because when you get one, it is spicy, but you don't get very many in there, so it doesn't make your food way too spicy. So those are great to throw in there for it. Let's give this a quick toss. Once I've got a nice kind of browning on my onions, I'm going to throw in my peppers and we'll let those start to saute. I feel like it's been just around 5 minutes on here, so I'm going to start taking these out in just a second. But I'm just going to break a couple out. You don't want to cook these all the way. It's just before al dente because we are going to be making a marinade that we're going to kind of cook them in. And so you want them to be able to soak that up without getting mushy. That is like the one thing that drives me insane if I get like takeout Chinese food and if my lo mein is soggy, it just ruins it for me. Okay, let me strain this. Get out some of that extra water. And then I'm just going to give them a light drizzle with some sesame oil. It's going to kind of lock in some flavor on them and also help keep them kind of stuck apart. But you don't have to worry too much about it because that marinade we pour over them will keep them also from like getting stuck together and break them apart. Here we go.
So I'm just talking to the chat about the one thing you don't make, and it's sushi.
Yes.
You should try it.
I have made sushi before. It is tough. And you have to have like, I've done it a couple of times before, and there are tricks to it. But part of it is being able to get the ingredients, which is hard, especially if you live in, I mean, we are near Nashville, so you could probably get it. But if you're landlocked, it's not the easiest to get. And so I don't make it there often because that is something that training to actually make sushi is like one of those skills that takes a really long time to master. And I know that will mine taste okay? Yeah, it'll be good, but it's not going to be great. And so I know I was one of those things. It's one of those things that I do want to really learn and master. I've done it a couple of times, but again, you know, it's a hard skill. It really is. And you got to get everything right. You got to get the rice right. Although now that I can get that, I found that rice in the freezer. That was always the biggest thing is getting the sticky rice right, because that's really hard. But I have recently found this nice sticky rice in the freezer that you can get. So maybe I'll have to, you know, put it in there because my daughter, my 10-year-old daughter, who used to tell me she hated sushi, now tells me that she loves sushi and she wants me to buy her sushi to pack in her lunch for school. And I'm just like, we're not that bougie. I'm not buying you sushi to have in your lunch at school. I was like, you're living in a different world. I would be lucky when I was a kid if I got like a Lunchable. But she has been really big into the California rolls, which are like your basic ones. Although my favorite roll, which I think would be hard to really recreate, is the eel and avocado roll. It's very simple, but I love the eel and avocado roll and that sweet kind of Japanese barbecue sauce they put on it, or that eel sauce, I should say. I've got some carrots here. These are white carrots. I've got a couple ones, but we're using up my rainbow pack. I'm giving them a nice peel so that when I cook them up in here with the onions and peppers, that they will just like get nice and tender and soak up the flavors. There we go. And I will say, I know sushi is one of those things. Maybe I'll get the courage and venture up to do it, but you've got to have like the special little mats, which I used to have. Where those are, I went through it and I made them. They were the ugliest sushi rolls ever. It would look like something my husband made. But I mean, they didn't taste that bad, but they weren't good. They weren't great. They didn't hit your sushi feeling for it. Okay, we're almost. We'll throw in an orange one here just to give a little pop of color. All my purple ones, I used all the purple ones up the other day when I did caramelized carrots and onions. And I've used up almost all the orange ones. So I have my sad little yellow carrots, which taste all the same essentially. Let's throw these in here so they can get a good saute on them. And then I'm going to slice up our mushrooms and we'll start making our marinade. Here we go. I'm going to grab a little bit of butter. Like, I want to say a teaspoon now. I might add a little bit more. I do like the mixture of butter, oil, and sesame oil in lo mein because I feel like they all work together to give that nice kind of lovely coloring on it. There we go. So let's get our mushrooms sliced up because, again, we're kind of cooking all the veggie components of our lo mein here. And then we'll throw in our noodles and our marinade at the kind of the end. Ooh, almost got a runaway one. But we're going to get our mushrooms. Now I'm using just baby bellas, but if you wanted to, shiitake mushrooms are, I would say, the best one to do. But, you know, to be affordable, baby bellas, white button mushrooms all work well. Just cut them nice and thin on there so that they kind of will get a nice saute on them. I always find buying the whole mushrooms at the store will last a lot longer. Pre-cut ones will get pretty slimy pretty quickly. So if you get them whole, you can just slice them up and they'll be ready. We'll get these ones, we'll toss them in, and then it seems like our meatballs are going to be done here. There we go. And it doesn't take too long to slice them up. I'm going to toss them in so they can start cooking. And then we'll cut up, after we get our meatballs out, we'll cut up our cabbage. And then we'll work on our marinade. And we're kind of on that final run. Give this a nice little toss. Okay, let's go check on our meatballs. They should be done. That air fryer setting really allows them to cook up pretty fast.
You have a question? Have you ever made beef Wellington?
Yes, I have. Let me give them a good tap, nice and firm. So beef Wellington was actually the first meal that I cooked for my husband. I was in college and I felt like I needed to be all bougie, so I made beef Wellington and green beans with like caramelized onions for him. Even though he's not a big fan of vegetables, he ate it all. He loved it, and I think maybe that's what hooked us on. You know, I hooked him on him was with my beef Wellington. So I do. Now, I a lot of times don't, if I don't have the beef tenderloin, I'll do a cheap version of beef Wellington using like a filet or a ribeye or just a slightly different cut of meat. And I make it, instead of like a wrapped round one, I do individual Wellingtons, and they're delicious. And it's slightly different. Okay, while those are sauteing up, let's get our marinade going. So let me grab a couple of my ingredients from over here. I need my ginger and my barbecue sauce. Okay, we're going to start with about 2 tablespoons of our Japanese barbecue sauce. Now, this is not barbecue sauce. This is like a sweetened, less salty soy sauce. It's a little bit thicker, but it is lovely. So we're just going to eyeball what our 2 tablespoons are. I'm going to use a little bit more at the very end, but this is our base. We're going to do about a teaspoon of sesame oil, about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of oyster sauce. There we go. And then about 2 tablespoons of coconut aminos, which is going to give a really lovely, kind of slightly sweetened flavor to it. It's just nice. And then let me grab a spoon because we're going to do our garlic and our miso paste. And then our ginger as well. So we're going to add in about a teaspoon and a half of garlic. You can use fresh if you wanted, but I feel like the work isn't worth it for this.
Do you have a question? Do you ever use hoisin sauce?
You know, I do sometimes on a couple of dishes, but I prefer, my kids don't like that flavoring quite as much. It's got a much richer flavor to it. But there are a couple of dishes that I have made with it. My kids have been telling me I need to make some more Asian dishes because they really love it. We're going to add in about a teaspoon of our ginger paste. If you don't have ginger paste, you can use about a half teaspoon of dried ginger. And then our miso paste. Now, you don't have to use miso paste, but I absolutely love it. You can get it in like the international section at your grocery store. Whole Foods has it. You can also get it on Amazon. So it's one of those things that is a bougier thing, but it lasts forever. And I incorporate it in a lot of different things. So we're going to mix this up. And this is going to be the base for our sauce. Here we go. And I'm just making sure I've got it all kind of mixed in here. I'm not going to pour it all in here when I get the veggies in there, but I'm going to pour a little bit to kind of saute it in there. Okay, let's get a little drizzle in here now. I put about a tablespoon or so in here. And then we're going to mix it up, kind of coat it, let those flavors soak in. And then we're going to just slice up our cabbage here. We're going to put a little bit of cabbage in there because I feel like cabbage and the pork meatballs just work really well together. Think about it like a pork egg roll.
You have a question? Is there anything for dessert?
We have our scotcheroos that we made up at lunchtime. They have pretty much almost set. So they will be ready to eat up. My kids have already kind of dived into them. But yes, because you got to have a little bit of sweetness with it. So we're going to cut this in. I'm putting in about, a half a cup, maybe a little bit more of our cabbage in here. We're going to mix it in. There we go. And we're going to let that cook nicely. Bring up those flavors. And then I'm going to get my green onions prepped because we're going to add these in as well. But I'm going to have them prepped because we're almost ready to put our noodles in.
You have a question? No purple cabbage?
No purple cabbage. I only grabbed a green cabbage at the grocery store this past week. So purple cabbage gives you a more beautiful look to it. And it's lovely. You could also use bok choy or some Napa cabbage or whatnot. But purple does give you that prettier look to it. Okay, we're going to put in a little bit more of our sauce. A couple spoonfuls here. You don't want to put in too much because you want to save this for our noodles. Here we go. And now we're going to add in our noodles. Now, we did coat them with a little bit of sesame oil, but they're going to be stuck together. But don't worry, once we pour our sauce over them, they'll break all the way apart. And so what I like to do is I kind of spoon it right over the top of our noodles. That way it's going to soak into them and there. And I still have some in reserve, but once it starts kind of hitting that, it's going to start to break apart just like that. You see? So don't worry about it. They will come apart. But this way you don't have to time your noodles to be done perfectly when you're taking them out with the water. Put a little bit on here. And doing this and putting them directly on the noodles are going to allow them to soak up all of that flavor, which is, really makes the lo mein. Here we go. We'll mix these veggies in, and then we'll toss in our meatballs. And we'll have our amazing pork lo mein. Here we go. Got a little bit more, but anytime you see kind of a chunk together, just dabble a little bit of it, and voila.
You have a question? Do you have an Alfredo or chicken Alfredo?
I do have a couple. You'll have to look for them. I have a couple of them. A lot of times I also call them my Parmesan cream sauce, but I do have some Alfredo sauces on there and a lot of different kind of cream sauces depending. I even did a lovely butternut squash Alfredo kind of Parmesan cream sauce, which was delicious. Okay, let me grab a spatula here so I can slide up under and get these meatballs in. I'm going to turn this down nice and low. These are our pork meatballs that we cooked up in the oven on our air fryer setting. So they've got nice kind of like a crispy outside, but nice and tender for just 15 minutes at 425. They're made with ground pork. We added in green onions, Japanese barbecue sauce, onion powders, egg, bread, milk, cream, and black pepper and ginger. So they have, and green onions. So they have this wonderful flavor to them. We're going to toss them into our lo mein. That way you'll have this nice flavor throughout. And of course, we have our veggies in there. And then we're going to finish this off with the rest of our marinade, a little extra Japanese barbecue sauce, and then our green onions. So think about it. This is kind of like, I realize this is kind of like an Asian spaghetti and meatballs. There we go. I'm going to drizzle that over. Make sure it hits kind of all of our meatballs here. And then I'm going to I always like to add just a little bit of our Japanese barbecue sauce at the very end on here. And just a good swirl around, like an extra, teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half. Here we go. And then I'm going to turn our heat off and we're going to add our green onions. And you always want to add these on at the very end so that they stay nice and fresh and they don't wilt. But voila, we have our pork meatballs, our teriyaki pork meatballs with our lo mein. So let's get ready to serve up. And then, of course, I'll bring our scotcheroos over as well so you guys can see the sweetness. And grab my plate. So here are our legendary scotcheroos that I made earlier, and they are finally set. This is made with peanut butter, sugar, corn syrup, and it has a chocolate and butterscotch topping to it. So you see they look like a Rice Krispie treat, but you don't use any marshmallows in it, and they are chewy and delicious. I'm going to have another one in just a second, but let's serve up our dinner. We have tonight for dinner our wonderful lo mein. So we have our lo mein noodles that we cooked with a wonderful kind of teriyaki sauce with some miso, ginger, green onions, coconut aminos, Japanese barbecue sauce. Our homemade pork meatballs, and these also have our Japanese barbecue sauce, ginger, and green onions in it. And then, of course, we have lots of our wonderful sautéed veggies in here as well. Peppers, onions, cabbage, mushrooms. So it's just chock full of deliciousness for dinner. Well,
you have a quick request. Can you show the noodle package?
Yes. So these, you can just get them in that international aisle, but they are the Kame lo mein noodles. If you can't find these, you can also use ramen noodles in a pinch. Just don't use any of the seasoning, but just cook them up. Those work well as well. But these give you that more traditional things. Well, guys, thank you so much again for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day and to show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can go to that link and search for what we made. So our teriyaki meatballs and lo mein, and you can watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets. I've got my big 6-quart sauté pan from All Clad in there, my knives, my cutting boards, all that different, all the different gadgets I use. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.